I never thought the moment that would end my relationship would be so quiet. No screaming, no throwing things, just one sentence that made me realize I was done fighting for someone who didn't want to be fought for. She looked me dead in the eye after I asked where she was going at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday and said those words that still echo in my head. I don't need to tell you where I'm going. You're not my dad. I remember standing there in our kitchen, the dinner I'd made for us getting cold on the counter, and something inside me just clicked off like a light switch. I looked at her, grabbed my keys, and said the only thing that made sense. You're right, I'm not. Then I walked out, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't ask where she was going, didn't wait up, didn't care. That was the night I stopped being her safety net, and it took her exactly 4 days to notice I wasn't coming home either. Let me back up because this didn't happen overnight. Natalie and I had been together for 3 years, living together for the last 18 months in a decent apartment in the city. We split rent, split bills, had a dog together, did the whole domestic thing that everyone says means you're serious. I work in tech, she works in marketing, and for a long time everything felt normal and stable. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our favorite restaurants, the kind of comfortable relationship where you can sit in silence and it doesn't feel weird. But somewhere around month 6 of living together, things started shifting in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on at first. She started coming home later, always with explanations that made sense on the surface but felt off when you added them all up. Work events that ran until midnight, happy hours that turned into late dinners, team-building activities that somehow never included photos or stories worth sharing. I'm not a naturally suspicious person, and I trusted her completely, so I just figured she was going through a busy phase at work and needed space to decompress. The changes were gradual enough that I kept making excuses for them. She stopped responding to my texts during the day, and when I'd mention it, she'd say her phone was in meetings or she was slammed with deadlines. She'd come home and go straight to her phone, laughing at messages she never shared, staying up late scrolling while I went to bed alone. Our weekends together became her weekends out, always something vague about meeting college friends or coworkers for brunch that stretched into dinner. I started noticing she put more effort into her appearance on random Tuesday nights than she did when we actually had plans together. New outfits I'd never seen, perfume that wasn't there in the morning, hair done up for what she called casual after-work drinks. Every time I'd try to make plans with her, she'd be non-committal, saying she might have something but wasn't sure yet, and then the night would come and she'd text me at 8 p.m. that she was out and would be home late. I kept telling myself this was just adulting, that people need independence, that I was being clingy or insecure for even noticing. The breaking point came on a Thursday night when I decided to do something nice. I left work early, stopped by the grocery store, bought everything for her favorite pasta dish, picked up wine, set the table with actual candles like we used to do when we first moved in together. I texted her around 5 that I was making dinner and asked what time she'd be home. She read it immediately but didn't respond. I texted again at 6, at 7, called at 8, and got sent to voicemail. By 9 p.m., I'd eaten alone, put her portion in the fridge, and was sitting on the couch wondering what the hell I was doing wrong. She walked in at 1:15 midnight, heels in her hand, makeup smudged, laughing at something on her phone. I was still up, couldn't sleep, and when she saw me, she didn't apologize or explain, just said she went out with people from work and lost track of time. I asked why she didn't text me back, and that's when her whole energy shifted from dismissive to defensive. She said I was being controlling, that she didn't need to check in every 5 minutes, that she was an adult and could handle her own schedule. I tried to explain I wasn't trying to control her. I just made dinner and wanted to know if she was coming home, and she hit me with that line that changed everything. The way she said it wasn't even angry, it was condescending, like I was some annoying kid asking his mom for permission to stay up late. I don't need to tell you where I'm going. You're not my dad. Something about the tone, the eye roll, the complete lack of acknowledgement that I'd spent 2 hours cooking for her just broke something in me. I didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't try to explain myself anymore. I just looked at her for a long moment, picked up my keys from the counter, and said it back to her. You're right, I'm not. Then I left. I drove to my buddy Marcus's place, crashed on his couch, and turned my phone off. When I finally checked it the next afternoon, she'd sent one text asking if I was coming home. Nothing else, no apology, no concern, just that one question like I was the one acting weird. That weekend was when everything shifted internally for me. I went back to the apartment, and she acted like nothing had happened, making small talk about her day, asking what I wanted to watch on Netflix. I realized she genuinely didn't think she'd done anything wrong, and more than that, she'd gotten so used to me being there being available, being the stable one, that she took it completely for granted. So I made a decision that probably sounds petty, but felt like the only way to protect what was left of my self-respect. If she wanted independence, if she didn't want to answer to anyone, if I was being too controlling by asking basic questions about her schedule, then fine, I'd give her exactly what she wanted, and I'd take the same freedom for myself. The next Friday, she texted me around 9 asking what I was doing. I was at a bar with coworkers, actually having a good time for the first time in weeks, and I texted back the exact words she'd used on me. I don't need to tell you where I'm going. You're not my mom. I left my phone in my pocket the rest of the night, got home around 2 a.m., and she was sitting on the couch waiting up. She asked where I'd been, and I just shrugged and set out with friends. She asked why I didn't tell her, and I reminded her that she specifically said she didn't need to check in with me. So I figured the same rules applied both ways. The look on her face was priceless, this mix of confusion and offense, like she couldn't believe I was using her own logic against her. That's when the real game began, and I say game because that's what it felt like, this weird test of who could care less. I stopped asking where she was going, stopped waiting up, stopped making plans that included her. I'd cook dinner for one, do my laundry separately, make weekend plans without checking if she was free. I started going to the gym every morning, signed up for a recreational basketball league, went fishing with Marcus on Saturdays, played poker with guys from work on random weeknights. I wasn't doing it to hurt her or prove a point. I was genuinely just taking care of myself and filling my time with things that made me feel good instead of sitting around wondering why I wasn't enough for the person who was supposed to be my partner. And here's the thing nobody tells you about relationships. The moment you stop chasing someone, the moment you stop being available and predictable and safe, that's when they start paying attention. Within 2 weeks, Natalie went from barely acknowledging my existence to suddenly being very interested in my schedule. She'd ask what I was doing that night, and I'd tell her I had plans. She'd ask with who, and I'd keep it vague, just friends or people from work, the same non-answers she'd been giving me for months. She started cooking dinner and acting offended when I told her I'd already eaten. She'd suggest watching a movie together, and I'd tell her I was heading out. The more unavailable I became, the more she wanted my attention, and I'm not gonna lie, part of me enjoyed watching her experience exactly what I'd been going through. The real turning point came about 3 weeks into this new dynamic. She decided to throw a party at our apartment, invited a bunch of people I'd never met, didn't ask me if it was okay, just announced it the day before like I was a roommate and not her boyfriend. I came home from work that Friday to find our living room packed with strangers, music blasting, people I didn't know drinking our alcohol, and sitting on our furniture. Our dog Max was going crazy, barking and stressed, and when I couldn't find Natalie to ask her to at least put him in the bedroom away from the chaos, I found her in the kitchen laughing with some guy I'd never seen before, his hand on her lower back, her completely comfortable with it. I picked up Max, put him in our bedroom with water and his favorite toy, grabbed my gym bag, and walked out without saying a word to anyone. I texted Marcus, crashed at his place again, and something fundamental shifted in me that night. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't even disappointed. I just genuinely stopped caring about what she did or who she did it with. And that's when I knew it was really over even if neither of us had said it out loud yet. The Monday after the party, I moved into what I can only describe as complete emotional detachment mode. I wasn't playing games anymore, wasn't trying to teach her a lesson or make her jealous. I just genuinely started living like a single guy who happened to share an apartment with a roommate. I stopped cooking for two entirely, started meal prepping on Sundays just for myself, buying groceries that only I would eat. When she'd come into the kitchen and see me eating, she'd look at the stove expecting a second portion that wasn't there, and I could see the confusion register on her face every single time. She'd ask if I made enough for her, and I'd just say I made enough for one because I didn't know if she'd be home. The same excuse she'd used on me dozens of times, now thrown back at her, and she had no response because what could she say without being a complete hypocrite? I started treating our shared space like a dorm, keeping my stuff separate, doing my own dishes immediately, not touching anything of hers. I do my laundry and leave hers in the basket, clean my bathroom counter and leave hers cluttered, take out trash from my room, but not the kitchen if it was full of her takeout containers. It sounds petty written out like this, but I was genuinely just done doing relationship things for someone who clearly didn't want to be in a relationship. Every morning I'd wake up at 6, hit the gym, come back and shower, make breakfast, and be out the door for work by 8, all while she was still asleep. I'd come home, change, and head right back out to basketball practice or poker night, or just the bar with Marcus and some guys from work. Some nights I wouldn't get home until midnight or later, and I'd walk in to find her sitting on the couch, TV on, but clearly not watching it, just waiting. The shift in her behavior was almost funny if it wasn't so frustrating. Suddenly, she wanted to know everything about my schedule. Where was I going? Who was I with? When would I be back? What was I doing this weekend? Every question got the same treatment from me, either vague non-answers or straight-up silence. One night, she asked what my plans were for Saturday, and I told her I was going fishing with Marcus. She asked where, and I just said upstate somewhere. She asked what time I'd be back, and I shrugged and said late. Depends on how the fish are biting. The look on her face was this mix of frustration and disbelief, like she couldn't comprehend that I wasn't giving her detailed itineraries anymore. She actually said the words that still make me laugh when I think about them. You're being really cold lately. I just looked at her and said what needed to be said. I'm not being cold. I'm just acting exactly like you've been acting for the past 6 months. She went quiet after that, didn't have a comeback, just stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. The basketball league became my escape twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday nights, and I started actually enjoying myself again. There was this woman named Andrea who played on one of the other teams, really cool, funny, into the same music I liked, and we'd grab food after games sometimes with the larger group. It was completely platonic, just friends hanging out, but I'd come home at 11 or midnight smelling like bar food, and Natalie would be waiting up like a worried parent. She'd ask who I was with, and I'd say people from the league. She'd ask if it was just guys, and I'd list off a few names including Andreas, not hiding anything, but also not explaining anything. I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I also wasn't reassuring her or making her feel secure, because why should I when she'd spent months making me feel exactly the same way? Things really escalated when she started trying to cook for us again. She'd text me during the day asking what time I'd be home for dinner, and I'd either not respond or text back that I already had plans to eat. One night, she made this whole spread, set the table, lit candles, the works, clearly trying to recreate what I'd done that night. She blew me off. I walked in at 7, saw the setup, and told her I'd already grabbed food with coworkers, but it looked nice. The hurt on her face was real, and part of me felt bad, but the bigger part of me remembered sitting alone at that same table eating by myself while she was out doing God knows what. She asked if we could talk, and I told her I had to shower and head back out for poker night. She asked if we could talk when I got back, and I said sure, but I'd probably be late and tired. I got home at 2 a.m. She was asleep on the couch waiting, and I just went to bed. The weekend fishing trip was apparently her breaking point. Marcus and I planned this whole weekend upstate, rented a cabin, brought enough supplies to be off-grid for 2 days. I told Natalie on Thursday I was leaving Friday after work and would be back Sunday evening. She asked why she wasn't invited, and I reminded her she'd told me months ago that fishing was boring and she'd never want to do it. She said things were different now. She wanted to spend time with me, and I told her the cabin only had 2 beds and Marcus already paid his half. She tried a different angle, asking if we could do something together the following weekend, and I said maybe, but I wasn't sure what my schedule looked like yet. The same non-committal answer she perfected, now being used on her. That whole weekend my phone was blowing up. Texts asking how the fishing was, what I was doing, when I'd be home, if I was okay, if I was mad at her. Calls that I let go to voicemail because I was genuinely out on a boat with no service half the time and enjoying the peace the other half. Marcus noticed and asked what was going on, and I gave him the full rundown. He just shook his head and said something that stuck with me. Man, she's realizing she had a good thing and took it for granted, and now she's panicking because you're not playing the game anymore. He was right. I'd stopped playing entirely, stopped caring about winning her attention or proving my worth, and that absence of effort was apparently more terrifying to her than any amount of fighting or arguing would have been. Sunday night, I got home around 9, exhausted and smelling like campfire and fish. Natalie practically jumped off the couch when I walked in, asking if I had a good time, if I caught anything, acting overly interested in details I knew she didn't actually care about. I answered her questions politely but distantly, like I was talking to a coworker asking about my weekend, then said I needed to shower and get ready for work in the morning. She followed me to the bedroom, hovering, clearly wanting to have some big conversation, and I could see the desperation building. She asked if we could talk, really talk, and I was honest with her. I'm exhausted, it's late, and I have an early meeting tomorrow. Can this wait? The look of devastation on her face was real, but so was my fatigue and my complete lack of energy to have whatever emotional conversation she suddenly decided she needed. The dynamic had completely flipped, and it was surreal watching it happen. She started texting me good morning every day, asking about my lunch plans, sending me funny videos she thought I'd like, all the little relationship maintenance things she'd stopped doing months ago. I'd respond when I felt like it, sometimes hours later, sometimes not at all. She'd ask if I wanted to watch something together at night, and I'd already have plans or tell her I was too tired. She started dressing up when she knew I'd be home, doing her makeup, wearing outfits I used to compliment her on, performing this version of a girlfriend she hadn't been in half a year. But the thing about checking out emotionally is that once you're truly out, it's incredibly hard to just flip that switch back on. And I was so far gone that her sudden attention felt more annoying than flattering. The real moment of reckoning came about 5 weeks into this new reality. I was out with the basketball crew, including Andrea, and we all ended up at this brewery near my apartment. Natalie had texted asking where I was, and for once I told her, gave her the name of the place because I had nothing to hide. She showed up 30 minutes later, dressed up, clearly having put effort in, and joined our group. The energy got immediately weird because everyone could tell this was some kind of territorial move, but Andrea was cool about it, introduced herself, made conversation. We all hung out for another hour, and I watched Natalie clock every interaction between Andrea and me, reading into every laugh and casual touch, driving herself crazy with scenarios that didn't exist. When we left, she was quiet on the walk home, and then finally broke. "Are you seeing her?" I stopped walking and just looked at her. "No, I'm not. We're friends from basketball. But would it matter if I was?" She started crying right there on the sidewalk, and I felt nothing but exhaustion. "I messed up. I know I messed up. I want to fix this." I told her the truth. I don't know if there's anything left to fix. That night on the sidewalk was the first time I'd seen her cry in months, and honestly, the first time she'd shown any real emotion about us that wasn't defensiveness or irritation. We stood there for maybe 5 minutes, her crying and me just waiting, until I finally said we should go home and talk about this properly. The walk back to our apartment was silent except for her occasional sniffles, and I remember thinking this was either going to be the conversation that ended everything or the one that forced us both to be honest for the first time in half a year. When we got inside, she immediately started apologizing, saying she knew she'd been distant and selfish and that she'd taken me for granted. I let her talk, didn't interrupt, just listened while she unloaded everything she'd apparently been holding in. She told me about Kyle, the guy from her office I'd seen at the party with his hand on her back. Said they'd been flirting for months. Nothing physical happened, but she'd been entertaining the attention because it made her feel wanted and exciting. She said she'd been going out so much because she was chasing this feeling of independence and importance, trying to prove to herself and her coworkers that she was fun and spontaneous and not tied down. The way she explained it, she'd gotten so comfortable in our relationship that she started feeling like she was missing out on something, like being settled meant being boring. So she pushed away from me, created distance, convinced herself that needing space from me meant she was being a strong, independent woman instead of just being a bad partner. Hearing her say it out loud, explaining her logic, made me realize how immature the whole thing was, but at least she was finally being honest. I asked her directly if she'd been physical with Kyle or anyone else, and she swore she hadn't, said it never went past flirting and attention-seeking. I wanted to believe her, and looking at her face, the genuine shame there, I think I did. But I also told her what she needed to hear, what had been building in me for weeks. I don't want a roommate who happens to be physically attracted to me. I want a partner who actually wants to be in my life. She nodded, crying harder, saying she understood. I kept going because this needed to be said. "You made me feel like I was suffocating you by just existing. Like asking basic questions about your day made me controlling, and I'm not going to live like that anymore. Constantly walking on eggshells wondering if caring about you makes me the bad guy." She broke down completely then, admitting everything I'd felt but she'd denied for months. The way she'd ignored my messages, blown off the dinner I'd cooked, locked Max in the bedroom during the party because she didn't want to deal with him, prioritized Kyle's attention over our relationship, made me feel crazy for noticing obvious red flags. She said she'd convinced herself that if she acted like she didn't need me, I'd want her more, some backwards game she'd read about online or heard from her single friends. Instead, she just pushed me away until I actually left, and now she was realizing that independence without connection is just loneliness with better branding. The self-awareness was coming too late, but at least it was coming. I told her the truth about where I'd been mentally for the past month and a half, that I'd genuinely checked out, stopped seeing her as my girlfriend, and started seeing her as someone I used to care about who lived in my space. That I'd been happier going to basketball and poker and fishing than I'd been at home in months. That running into Andrea and having a completely normal, friendly conversation with a woman felt like a revelation because I'd forgotten what it was like to interact with someone who actually seemed interested in what I had to say. I wasn't trying to hurt her with any of this, just being honest about how far gone I actually was. She asked if I wanted to break up, and I gave her the most honest answer I could. I don't know. I know I don't want to keep living like this. And I know that you saying sorry isn't enough if nothing actually changes. That's when she surprised me. Instead of getting defensive or making excuses, she asked what would need to change for me to even consider staying. So I laid it out, not as demands, but as non-negotiables for any relationship I'd be willing to be in. Complete transparency about where she's going and who she's with. Not because I need to control her, but because that's basic respect between partners. No more hidden friendships with guys who are clearly interested in more than friendship, meaning Kyle needed to be completely cut off. Actual communication about plans, schedules, and decisions that affect both of us, like throwing parties in our shared home. Real presence in the relationship, not just physically being here, but emotionally showing up. And most importantly, consistent effort, not just trying hard for 2 weeks until things feel stable again and then sliding back into old patterns. She agreed to everything, said she'd do whatever it took, and I told her point blank that I needed to see actions, not words. That I'd been hearing her say what I wanted to hear for years, but the past 6 months showed me what she actually prioritized when given the choice. The next morning, she deleted Kyle from everything, blocked his number, and showed me her doing it. She cleared out her social media, unfollowed a bunch of guys from work and college who'd been sliding into her DMs. She texted her friends and told them she needed to focus on her relationship and wouldn't be available for random nights out multiple times a week. She started cooking dinner and actually being home to eat it, asking about my day and listening to the answers, making plans with me for weekends instead of around me. The real test came 2 weeks later when her office had another happy hour event. She told me about it in advance, said she was planning to go for one drink to show face, and would be home by 8. I told her I trusted her to make good decisions, didn't ask for updates or check-ins, just said have fun. She texted me at 7:30 saying she was heading home, walked in at 8 with takeout from my favorite Thai place, and we ate dinner together while she told me about her day. It sounds like such a basic thing, being home when you say you will be and bringing food. But after months of broken promises and vague excuses, it felt significant. She was actually following through. Over the next 3 months, things slowly rebuilt. Not back to what they were, because what they were had clearly been broken, but into something more honest and balanced. She put in consistent effort, showed up emotionally, communicated clearly, and actually seemed to value our relationship instead of resenting it. I stopped keeping score, stopped comparing everything she did to everything she'd failed to do, and started engaging with the person she was becoming instead of the person she'd been. We had actual conversations about boundaries and needs instead of assuming the other person should just know. She made an effort with Max, taking him on walks and playing with him instead of treating him like an inconvenience. She came to one of my basketball games and met everyone properly, became friends with Andrea in a way that felt genuine instead of territorial. It's been about 6 months since that night on the sidewalk, and I'm not going to lie and say everything is perfect now because relationships aren't fairy tales. We still have disagreements, still have moments where old patterns try to resurface, still have to actively choose each other instead of just coasting. But the difference is that we're both actually trying now, both showing up, both treating this like something worth fighting for instead of something we're entitled to. She became the partner I needed her to be, and I stopped being the checked-out ghost I'd turned into. For the first time in a long time, when I come home, I actually want to be there. And when she says she loves me, I believe her, because her actions match her words now. Sometimes you have to completely lose someone to realize you actually want them, and sometimes you have to stop caring to remember why you cared in the first place. We got lucky that we both figured it out before it was too late, but it was a hell of a lot closer to over than either of us wants to admit. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.